Good morning. It is Monday, the 2nd of February. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily fix of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, Iran has declared the armies of European countries terrorist groups after the EU last Thursday agreed to list the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organisation. During a session in Tehran, lawmakers wore IRGC uniforms and chanted slogans including, quote, death to America and, quote, shame on you, Europe. Meanwhile, calls are growing inside Iran for an inquiry into the number of people killed during recent protests, which were met with a violent crackdown. Let's get up to speed with Euronews' Stefan Kobe, who's following the situation for us. Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Maeve.
Tell us, what are the consequences of this going forward?
Well, there are no immediate practical consequences. This was a rather symbolic move by the Iranian government that will certainly not scare the bejesus out of European governments. It was designed to impress a domestic Iranian audience. And just the way it was delivered, it wasn't just a press release or an answer to a question in a press conference. It was very publicly delivered during a session of the Iranian parliament. And the speaker of the Iranian parliament delivered this, what he thought was a stern warning to Europeans. Let's have a listen.
Armies of European countries are considered terrorist groups, and the European Union is responsible for the consequences of this decision. By seeking to strike at the Guard, which itself has been the greatest barrier to the spread of terrorism to Europe, Europeans have in fact shot themselves in the foot. And once again, through blind obedience to the Americans, decided against the interests of their own people.
So even if you don't speak Farsi, this was a very fiery speech here, as I said, designed to impress the Iranian public. If we talk about consequences, I mean, not even the declaration of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization by the Europeans will have, profound consequences. It will have asset freeze, a travel ban, these kinds of things that are already in place as part of the larger sanction regime that the Europeans have slapped on Iran many years ago.
And meanwhile, Stefan, bring us up to speed on the diplomatic efforts over the weekend to cool down the situation.
Well, absolutely. There was a very intense diplomatic activity over the weekend. Why is that so? Because of the strong military buildup by the United States. This is the reason here. Donald Trump has stepped up his rhetoric last week. He has sent naval units to the Persian Gulf. There are now at least 10 big warships, according to the U.S. Navy, in the region. And he said during the weekend that, yes, there might be a way to negotiate peacefully, to have a diplomatic solution to this. And everybody in the region is hoping for that this will happen. The Qatari prime minister was in Tehran on the weekend. There was a telephone call between the Egyptian president with his Iranian counterpart. So all these mediators try to bring the U.S. and Iran closer together to avoid a military strike, which President Donald Trump is still, contemplating, although he doesn't say so. The big question for us is here, does Iran, as they have announced, does Iran have the capacity, the military capacity to strike back? I mean, they have rebuilt their missile arsenal since last year's short war against Israel. We're a little in the dark here whether they do have the capacity to strike the U.S. And of course, the U.S. is now very much present in the region. And the more you expose yourself, the more you sort of invite a counterattack. So this is going to be a tricky question for the days and weeks ahead.
Okay, Stefan Kobe, we're keeping, of course, a very close eye on that here at Euronews. Thank you so much for that update. Well, now, coming up, we'll be joined by Ignacy Chimczycki, the State Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland, responsible for EU affairs. Ignacy Niemczycki oversees Polish interests in the European Union and is actually in Paris today for talks with the OECD. So we can bring him in fact, for there. Good morning. Thank you so much for speaking to us. First, your reaction to the latest statements.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you with us. Just first, your reaction, please, to the latest statements from Iran that European armies are, quote, terrorist groups. How would you respond to that?
It's obviously absurd, but it's mainly a propaganda move. As your colleague said, it doesn't really have any practical implications. So I don't think this will in any way change our position. I'm very happy to see the EU united, expressing solidarity with the Iranian people. It's quite clear the actions by the Iranian regime cannot go unanswered.
The European Union just last Thursday putting the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organisation. What impact will this have, do you think?
Well, first, it's a travel ban for the whole organization. So whoever is associated with the organization cannot come to Europe. Most importantly, it's also an asset freeze. So whatever money any of the people have in Europe or other jurisdictions, those assets will be frozen. But again, and I agree with your colleague, this is largely a symbolic action. We're sending a signal to the Iranian regime that this was too much, and simply speaking, the government cannot attack its own people.
And how would you feel about a US-led military intervention in Iran if no deal is struck, if the diplomatic efforts do not work?
Well, I think all of us are hoping for de-escalation. So we're looking at the US efforts right now with hope that this will lead to a sensible agreement. And from what I've seen, President Trump has announced that the negotiations are promising. So I'm hoping that we'll see that there is a kind of an agreement that is beneficial for Europe and that is beneficial for the US and for world peace, because that's really what's at stake here.
And what about Ukraine? The talks to end the war have made little progress. They'll resume, of course, this Wednesday in Abu Dhabi. Any hope or faith in these talks?
Well, we're looking at those talks with great interest, and we're really hoping that the US will be able to convince Russia to be more creative in those discussions, I would say. Russia is not negotiating with a goodwill right now. So what we see is that they are trying to prolong the discussion, whereas we strongly believe that Ukraine made a significant effort to find a solution, to find an end to this war. So the question right now is whether Russia wants to end the war or not. Our understanding of the situation is that, unfortunately, they want to continue it. And we've seen this over the last couple of days with Russia targeting civilian infrastructure in Kiev, with the freezing temperatures around -20 in Kiev. We've seen Russia targeting heat generation, electricity generation. This is very concerning.
But it's the issue, of course, of the territories, right? I mean, that is the sticking point. How will they resolve that issue over territory, over the Donetsk region?
Well, it's Donetsk, it's Donbass, and obviously this will be a very difficult conversation for Ukraine, and it's really up to the Ukrainian people, up to the Ukrainian government to decide what kind of concessions, if any, are they willing to make. So I don't think it's really up to us to say that Ukraine should do this or that. Instead, I think we should be saying that Russia, as the aggressor, should be doing this or that. So we are aware that those discussions will be difficult, but really we need to put pressure on Russia, not Ukraine.
And you mentioned, of course, the freezing temperatures in Ukraine. What is Poland doing to help its neighbour here?
Well, I'm quite happy with the reaction of the Polish people, and I wanted to thank them for that. There's really been quite a movement, some charitable collections to collect money for heat and electricity generators. I think around 2,000 already went from Poland to Ukraine, and obviously the Polish government is also sending the equipment as well. So we've seen Polish people being in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. I'm very happy to see that. We are all tired with the war. That's quite clear. But at the same time, I'm very happy to see that Polish people absolutely understand who do we need to help right now.
And President Zelensky has said he hopes to join the European Union by 2027. Do you think that's feasible or doable?
Well, the accession process is quite lengthy, so I think this would be very difficult to see Ukraine joining the EU by 2027. But I think we are all ambitious. EU has repeatedly said that the future of Ukraine is in the EU, and this date, this agreement to see Ukraine in the EU will be part, hopefully, of the peace agreement. So I wouldn't really concentrate that much on a date. I'd concentrate more on the fact of Ukraine joining the EU.
Okay.
But even if it's not 2027, I think it could be soon.
Okay, State Secretary, thank you so much for joining us live this morning from the French capital. Well, now it's time to turn our attention to Italy, where thousands have been gathering to protest against the planned presence of US immigration and customs enforcement agents in the upcoming Winter Olympics starting this Friday. For more, we can go straight over to the Italian capital and bring in our Rome correspondent, Giorgia Orlandi. Good morning, Giorgia. Thank you so much for joining us. These protests really seem to be overshadowing the Games. Fill us in.
Good morning, Maeve. Well, that's the plan. As you mentioned, demonstrators took to the streets in Milan last Saturday after it was confirmed that ICE agents would join the US delegation to the Winter Olympics Games. Who were these people? These people were mainly members of Italy's main opposition parties, residents of Milan, members of AMPI organizations which commemorate the memory of Italy's partisan resistance during World War II. In the same way as US protesters, they were blowing whistles, singing Bruce Springsteen songs. And we also heard from Giorgia Meloni, who recently said, she finally spoke out saying, quote, that it's contradictory that these are the same people who demand that the US do more to defend Europe. But we also understand that the main argument behind the protests is the fact that somehow Meloni is perceived as too accommodating towards the US and US President Donald Trump. We also know that those ICE agents, according to the US Department of Homeland Security, would not be carrying out immigration enforcement operations on the ground, specifically in foreign countries. But despite all these assurances, the protest continues. More rallies have already been planned in the next few days. One in particular is going to take place on the opening day of those games, and a second one the following day. Italy's Interior Minister is going to address Parliament on the issue on a Wednesday. And just to give you an idea of how global the scale of the protest is, over the weekend, French tech company Capgemini said that it would sell its US unit after coming under pressure for selling services to ICE agents, services that are allegedly used to track people down as part of that large anti-immigration program. Maeve?
OK, Giorgia Orlandi, thank you so much for all those updates. And we've seen as well the International Olympic Committee has admitted it's distracting and, quote, sad that the build-up to the events has been dominated by the deployment of ICE agents and also the appearance of the Los Angeles 2028 chair, Casey Wasserman, in the Epstein's files. You might have noticed this weekend the US Justice Department dropped millions of files related to the late child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And some European names have surfaced too. For more on this story, let's bring in Euronews' Alice Tidy. Good morning.
Good morning.
So just fill us in on the European angle here to these Epstein files.
Yes, so we had two political resignations this weekend over this release, this latest release from the US Department of Justice. The first one was in Slovakia, actually, where the Miroslav Lapčák, the national security advisor of Prime Minister Robert Fico, resigned. So he had previously been Foreign Affairs Minister. He had also previously been an EU Special Envoy to the Western Balkans. And what the latest files show is a text exchange that he had in 2008 with Epstein prior to a meeting actually with Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov, in which the two men discuss women. And they also discuss a picture that Epstein shared, but that was not included in the documents, to which Lapčák replied, "Why am I not invited to these games?" So pretty damning. And then the second resignation was in the UK from Lord Peter Mandelson. He resigned from the Labour Party. Mandelson had been cabinet minister under 2 Labour government. He had also been recently the British ambassador to the US, a position he actually held for less than a year before being sacked following the release of the first batch of documents related to Epstein. These latest documents suggest that he had received money from Epstein. So it's important to note, though, that this is not actually proof of wrongdoing, but that basically any link to Epstein is now proving radioactive for political...
And indeed, as we're seeing resignations already, it's just Monday morning, Alice. And just briefly, not just political appointees here, but also the royal family.
Yes, indeed. More embarrassment for the British royal family, because Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, King Charles's brother, is once again mentioned in those files. These files show emails exchanged between the two men in 2010 and 2011. It also includes a picture of Andrew kneeling on all fours over a female lying on the floor. Again, not proof of any wrongdoing, but the issue here is that Andrew had previously said that he had cut off all contact with Epstein by that point. So this shows that this is not true. And then also included in the files was the Norwegian crown princess Mette-Marit, who had a friendship with Epstein from 2011 to 2014. She's released a statement over the weekend saying that she deeply regrets that friendship and that she exercised poor judgment. Yes, that's the latest for the royal families related to Epstein.
Fascinating revelations inside there in the Epstein files that were released this weekend. You can take a closer look to all those details on Euronews.com. But Alice Tidy, thank you so much for joining us live here this morning. And as we mentioned earlier, the next round of US-led talks on Ukraine will take place this Wednesday and Thursday over in Abu Dhabi. So the world's media attention will be on them. But of course, the more these talks drag on, the more locals on the ground are suffering. Our Jakob Janis takes a look.
Can you imagine starting your week in minus 20 degrees? Here in Brussels, a power cut is just an inconvenience. However, in Kiev right now, it is a survival threat. While Western Europe enjoys a mild winter, Ukraine is freezing. Temperatures have plunged to minus 20. And this extreme weather has become a weapon just as powerful as any missile. When the power goes out at these temperatures, it's not just the lights that die. Without electricity, the water pumps stop working, cutting off water supply. And without heat, the pipes inside buildings freeze and burst, causing long-term damage that can't be fixed until spring. And electric heaters, they are useless if there is no grid to power them. And in this war, the energy grid has effectively become the fourth front. Ukraine's system is battered. This is the result of Russia's campaign targeting critical infrastructure. And the damage is now so severe that even without a new missile strike, civilians are fighting a daily battle just to survive the cold. The EU is sending Ukrainians hundreds of emergency power generators, and Brussels is declaring it will not let Russia freeze Ukraine. And it's not only governments that are helping, as European NGOs and volunteers are also supporting the most vulnerable on the ground. But generators cannot stop missiles. And according to Kiev, in January alone, Russia launched 6,000 drones and over 5,000 bombs, targeting Ukraine's energy and railway infrastructure. And the cold, as well as Russian attacks, show no signs of ending soon.
Jakob Janis reporting for us there. And for more on the ongoing situation in Ukraine or on any of the stories we're covering for you today here on Europe Today, do visit Euronews.com or download our app. You can also take a look at all our social media sites and join us there, or DM if you'd like to get in touch. But that does bring this edition of Europe Today to an end this Monday. Thank you so much for your company. We'll be back again tomorrow morning, bright and early, with more European news and analysis. In the meantime, take care and see you soon on Euronews.